In this section, I want to introduce a really important concept in public health and killer microbes getting their revenge, antibiotic resistance. So this is, on the next couple of slides, some quotes from Alexander Fleming's Nobel Prize award-winning Nobel Prize speech. Like when he won the award, he came to Sweden and gave a speech. And so this is what he said, even as far back as the 1940s. But I'd like to sound one note of warning. Penicillin is to all intents and purposes non-poisonous, so there's no need to worry about giving an overdose and poisoning the patient. There may be a danger, though, in underdosage. It is not difficult to make microbes resistant to penicillin in the laboratory by exposing them to concentrations not sufficient to kill them, and the same thing has occasionally happened in the body. The time may come when penicillin can be bought by anyone in the shops. Then there's the danger that the ignorant man may easily underdose himself and by exposing his microbes to non-lethal quantities of the drug, make them resistant. Here's a hypothetical illustration. Mr. X has a sore throat. He buys some penicillin and gives himself not enough to kill the streptococci, but enough to educate them to resist penicillin. He then infects his wife. Mrs. X gets pneumonia and is treated with penicillin. As the streptococci are now resistant to penicillin, the treatment fails. Mrs. X dies. Who is primarily responsible for Mrs. X's death? Why, Mr. X, whose negligent use of penicillin changed the nature of the microbe. Moral: if you use penicillin, use enough. So even as far back as the 1940s, scientists recognized the idea that the inappropriate use of antibiotics, either through trying to use them for infections where they won't work, or not using enough, or stop using them as soon as you start to feel better, those things can all promote antibiotic resistance. And when microbes become resistant to antibiotics, that poses a risk for the next people who are going to get the infection. So antimicrobial resistance occurs when a drug loses its effectiveness against an organism. It used to work and now it doesn't. And this really threatens many advances in modern medicine. And really what we're approaching is what's called the post-antibiotic era, where infections that you normally would have gone to the doctor, got some antibiotics, you'll be totally fine, could kill you instead. So we're getting to a point where deaths from infection and infectious disease illnesses could kill us. There are a number of different types of antimicrobial resistance. So when we say antimicrobial resistance, we're talking about all sorts of microbes. If we're talking about antibacterial resistance, sometimes they'll use the same term, antibiotic resistance. We're talking mostly about bacteria. So we have bacteria that are resistant to drugs. We have viruses that are resistant to drugs. We have parasites that are resistant to drugs, and fungi that are resistant to drugs. And the idea that we have to think about is, well, how does this occur? What is a cell, like let's say a bacteria, what is a bacterial cell doing that allows it to be resistant to antibiotics? So it can develop a new process in the cell to, whatever, the antibiotic is stopping me from doing A, I'm going to do B instead. That's fine. Microbes can produce compounds or enzymes that break down the drug. It gets in, that's fine. I know how to destroy it, no problem. Microbes can prevent the drug from getting in. Can't get in, can't work. Microbes can let the drug get in, but then throw it right back out. So they have these things called pumps that just boop, boop. Microbes can change what the drug binds to. Oh, the drug binds to protein A. I'm going to change protein A just a little bit, and now the drug can't bind anymore. It's like a lock and key model. You still have a lock, but once you change the lock a little bit, the key doesn't work. So if you change that protein just a little bit, the antibiotic might not work anymore. So microbes have evolved mechanisms to do these things to protect themselves from antibiotics. And of course, the idea, well, how does it spread? One of the misconceptions I think that sometimes people have is they think that antibiotic resistance only happens if you expose a bacteria to a drug. Like the bacteria has to see the drug in order to become resistant. And that's a big misconception. Even a lot of like microbiology majors have this misconception. But really what happens is, in nature, evolution is random. It just happens. And if whatever evolved is good, it will persist in the population. If whatever evolved is bad, whoever evolved it will die. So that won't persist in the population usually. Most of the time, things that evolve are either neutral. So it's neither favored nor disfavored, or they're bad and, everybody dies. But every once in a while, randomly, something good happens. And when you think about bacteria and you think about how small they are and how many there are in just a 1 liter like water bottle or media, like 1 liter can have trillions of bacteria. So the odds of one of them evolving something good randomly is pretty high. So now we think about a population of bacteria that has infected a person. There could be billions or trillions of bacteria. Probably not trillions. Let's scale that back. Let's say even millions or billions of bacteria in the infection in the person. Again, pretty decent odds that one of them just randomly evolved antibiotic resistance. Let's say to penicillin. So you have lots and lots of bacteria. Maybe a couple of them randomly got resistant to penicillin. So your patient is taking penicillin, and that's great because it kills all of these other bacteria. Now the idea is you continue to take the penicillin to keep all these other bacteria down, and then your immune system should come in here and clean the rest of these up. So that's why you take like your 10-day course of antibiotics. But what often happens is a patient will say, oh, I feel better because all these are gone. And so I'm going to stop taking my drugs. Or maybe not all of them are gone. Maybe most of them are gone. I feel better. I'm going to stop taking my drugs. But what happens then is that the immune system hasn't had a chance to catch up. And now these guys are left. And so they keep reproducing. And the majority of them are going to be antibiotic resistant. And maybe one of them, oops, my bad, evolved and lost the antibiotic resistance. But that's okay. It's protected by everybody else. And one of the other challenges is that sometimes bacteria can share antibiotic resistance. They can exchange the genes. And so you might have normal bacteria in your body that are not resistant, but you promoted the growth of some of these resistant ones, and they can share it and spread that antibiotic resistance that way. And we also see it spread in a number of different settings. So let's start right up here at the top, and we'll go to the left. Animals get antibiotics. So in agriculture, antibiotics are relatively common because they help prevent infection in the animals, and they help the animals grow bigger faster. So these animals, they're not sick though. They're exposed to antibiotics. They develop antibiotic resistant bacteria, especially in their guts. So in the feces, they're shedding lots of antibiotic resistant bacteria. During the butchering process, especially in commercial farms, a lot of the meat gets contaminated with feces from the animals. And then if the meat is not handled or cooked properly, that bacteria can spread to people. The other way that it can spread, fertilizer or water containing animal feces, and therefore the drug-resistant bacteria, can be used on food crops. So not even the meat, but the crops. And then the drug-resistant bacteria can remain in the crops, if you don't cook it. And sometimes washing it isn't even sufficient. There was a really major E. coli outbreak associated with spinach. And it turned out that what was happening was because of the fertilizer because of the water that was contaminated with feces, the fecal bacteria soaked into the ground and got sucked up into the spinach leaves. And so even washing didn't remove the bacteria because the bacteria were on the inside of the plant. They were in the plant vasculature, the plant veins that transmit the water. So the only way to have gotten rid of it was to cook it. So if you ate a raw spinach salad, you were in trouble. Okay, so even the meat or the crops. The other way that it can get into a population is, let's say, George had to take antibiotics. Maybe he didn't take his course properly, or maybe he was like some patients and he was like, I have a stuffy nose. I want antibiotics. Like, he went to the doctor, but most of the time, if you have a stuffy nose, it's a cold, which is a virus, and antibiotics don't work. But your doctor's like, whatever, I just want you to be happy. Like, here's your antibiotics. So he develops antibiotic resistant bacteria in his gut. And as he's at home and as he's going through the community, he's spreading those bacteria to other people. Or maybe he goes to the hospital or a nursing home or another care facility. And then those bacteria spread throughout the facility to other patients and on surfaces, or through the unclean hands of healthcare providers. Eventually those patients might go home, and then the bacteria spreads again through the community. So the idea here is summarized on the bottom. Just using antibiotics doesn't necessarily create resistance, but it promotes resistance, and it promotes the spread of resistance. Because remember, resistance just evolves randomly, but by using antibiotics, especially using them inappropriately, we promote the spread and we promote the selection of resistant bacteria. So you should only use antibiotics to treat infections where the antibiotics will be effective. They're not going to help you if you have the flu. They're not going to help you if you have COVID. They're not going to help you if you have a cold. But if you have a staph infection in your skin, that's super helpful. You should take antibiotics. And this is, again, really important to highlight the idea that actually the majority of antibiotics used are actually used in agriculture, in farm animals. And that is an inappropriate use of antibiotics. So unless the farm animal has an infection, they should not be being treated with antibiotics. And the problem is, now that we have so much antibiotic resistance and we enter, this post-antibiotic era, we're looking at now the history of medicine. Okay, well, we've talked about this before. What do you do if you are sick? Well, here, eat this root. And then, actually, you should pray. Oh, you should have this poison. Oh, you should take this pill. Oh, antibiotics. Yes. Oh, we have some antibiotic resistance to penicillin. Let's go ahead and try a different antibiotic. Oh, oops. Let's try other antibiotics. And other antibiotics. And now we're in a situation where, the bugs have won. Here, eat this root. Do we go back to that cycle of now we don't know what to do? Because we're in this era where antibiotic resistance is getting to be so common and so dangerous. I don't know. I don't know the answer to what we do. And, we look at this timeline. The antibiotic was introduced kind of in the yellow color, and there was resistance identified in the red. And with penicillin, it was kind of broad, tetracycline, vancomycin. But sometimes, look at levofloxacin. Basically, when it was introduced, we already identified resistance. Some of these really modified drugs that are kind of the last resort of drugs, resistance is already there, basically. By the time the drug is approved, we already have resistance. And again, you can kind of look at these, and some of the things that I think are kind of interesting on here. Okay, methicillin was approved or released in 1960. Methicillin-resistant Staph aureus was identified in patients in 1960. Okay, great. Where's another one that I thought was funny? Fluconazole is a drug to treat fungal infections. It was FDA approved in 1990, but we already knew that we had fluconazole-resistant Candida infections in patients in 1988. So there was already resistance by the time we introduced the drug, and it was in patients. And then here you have a really powerful modern antibiotic. Same year, you have bacteria that are resistant to that antibiotic. And so, one of the other patients that I think is really important to think about is there was a woman who in late 2016, early 2017 was diagnosed with an infection caused by this bacterium right here, Klebsiella pneumoniae. And she was diagnosed she was in Nevada. And the infection that she had was resistant to every single FDA-approved antibiotic in the United States. Every antibiotic. So what do? How do you treat that patient? How did they treat that patient? They didn't. She died. There was nothing they could do. There were no antibiotics that would work against her infection. So we're talking about the idea that an infection is not just resistant to one antibiotic. There are infections that are resistant to all of the antibiotics. And that's through a combination of, that random evolution of antibiotic resistance and the sharing of antibiotic resistance. So that combination promotes the spread of bacteria that are resistant to all of the drugs. And when you have a situation where bacteria are resistant to all of the drugs, you have a situation where your patient is probably going to die. And so we see, in this timeline, how quickly antibiotic resistance can occur in patient populations, but how quickly does it occur actually in the microorganisms themselves? And so this is a video produced by a group out of Harvard that is actually really cool in showing how quickly bacteria evolve antibiotic resistance, outside of the patient, just in their general, going about their day.
So what we ended up building was basically a petri dish, except that it's 2 feet by 4 feet. And the way we set it up is that there are 9 bands, and at the base of each of these bands, we put a normal petri dish thick agar with different amounts of antibiotic. On the outside, there's no antibiotic. Just in from that, there's barely more than the E. coli can survive. Inside of that, there's 10 times as much, 100 times, and then finally the middle band has 1,000 times as much antibiotic. And then across the top of it, pour some thin agar that bacteria can move around in. The background is black because there's ink in it, and the bacteria appear as white. First, you see they spread in the area where there's no antibiotic, up until the point they can no longer survive. Then a mutant appears on the right. It's resistant to the antibiotic, it spreads until it starts to compete with other mutants around it. When these mutants hit the next boundary, they too have to pause and develop new mutations to make it into 10 times as much antibiotic. And then you see the different mutants repeat this at 100. And after about 11 days, they finally make it into 1,000 times as much antibiotic as the wild type can survive. And so we can see by this process of accumulating successive mutations that bacteria, which are normally sensitive to an antibiotic, can evolve resistance to extremely high concentrations in a short period of time.
So again, I really want to highlight what he said there towards the end of the video. Within 11 days, the bacteria had evolved resistance, and you saw how many of them had evolved resistance to 1,000 times the amount of antibiotic that should have previously killed them. So imagine that happening inside the body.